Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 15 of the Superintendent Spotlight for 2015-2016. Today we're going to talk about our foreign language program in the Hingham Public Schools, and in this first segment we'll get some background information and then we'll talk about the elementary program. We're so excited to have kindergarten added for the very first time ever in the Hingham Public Schools, learning Spanish. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about a couple of our secondary programs, in particular Latin and Chinese, our newest offering. But first, I'd like to introduce my guest for this segment. To my left, Sue Keys, and Sue is the K-12 Director of Foreign Language in Hingham, and Sue is actually retiring at the end of this year, so we're in the process of, I won't say finding a replacement, because we can't find replacements for good people, but fulfilling that vacancy. And then we are going to talk about elementary Spanish, so I also have to my far left Jen Gonzalez, and Jen is a foreign language teacher. In which two schools do you cover, Jen?
Actually, this year I'm just in Plymouth River.
Just in Plymouth River, okay. Yes. And then we have Chelsea Holloway, who's new this year, and Chelsea, you cover Foster and?
Foster school, yep.
Just Foster?
Just Foster,
okay.
Right. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So let's start with Sue.
Sure.
So I know a bit about the foreign language program, haven't been around for a while, as you know. Yeah. But so if we start with the sequence, we're now offering 4 languages.
That's correct.
And that starts, as I said earlier, with Spanish in the elementary school. So talk me through what offerings we have and where students can pick up a different or an additional language.
Okay. Well, we have a very well-developed, well-articulated program that is vertically aligned kindergarten through 12th grade. So students, all of the students in the 4 elementary schools take Spanish. It's an oral approach, and they learn phrases and they learn expressions and the alphabet and numbers, a lot of songs. It's very student-centered, very active. And they'll continue with that through 5th grade. And then when students go to the middle school in 6th grade, some of them opt to take French. Whatever language they take in middle school, they would take for all 3 years. And that's a slightly more academic approach. The theory being that by the time they've completed 8th grade, they will have also completed the first year of language study. And then at the high school, we continue with French and Spanish, but we also have added a robust Latin program and a Mandarin program. We level in 8th grade at the middle school. We take kids who are capable of handling a faster paced, more in-depth program. And the same thing at the high school. We have honors in all 4 languages. And then for those students who qualify, they can take advanced placement courses in those 4 languages.
In all 4, that's really significant.
That is significant, yes.
Particularly for the 2 languages that we start only in the in the 9th grade. So we're going to hear more about that in our second segment today.
Yes.
So traditionally in Hingham, we have had French and Spanish for a long time, and also Latin, it seems, forever, at least at the high school level. So what does the breakdown tend to be in the middle school when they make a choice to either to go to French or to stick with Spanish?
It consistently for the last number of years has been about 2 to 1, and those numbers stay pretty constant through the high school. So at the high school right now, I think there are a little under 1,200 students, maybe 1,190, but I think it's wonderful. There are over 1,000 kids in the 4 years who are still taking a foreign language, and that number significantly increased over the past few years because colleges and universities are looking for 3 to 4 years of foreign language. At the high school, it's 2 to 1 French to Spanish, and then it's pretty evenly split between Mandarin and Latin, Latin being about 150 and Chinese being a little bit less than that.
Okay. So with respect to our graduation requirements, you mentioned colleges are expecting 3 at least or 4 years in one language. What is our graduation requirement in Hingham for foreign language?
The graduation requirement is 2 consecutive years of the same language. And for some students, for one reason or another, some of them decide to move into other areas, particularly if they're going to go into the sciences and math. May not be able to continue, but increasingly, as I mentioned, we have students who, as an elective, are adding the 3rd or 4th year.
Right. So the 2 years is the requirement, but certainly not the optimal, and certainly not what most kids actually do.
That's
in
right.
our school.
And in fact, I think there's an increasing number every year. It's a small number to be sure, who are taking 2 languages. So perhaps they come to the high school, excuse me, continuing in French or Spanish, but they will pick up Latin or Mandarin in one of those 4 years and continue with that for a few years as well.
And certainly in Hingham, in recent years, we've had a tremendous focus on global studies.
Yes.
And we actually offer a global studies certificate
Yes, we do.
for graduation.
Right.
And we have a global studies club.
Right.
And those are both very popular. And languages play into, particularly the certificate program, in
Right.
what way?
Well, they do. Well, one of the requirements is that the student take a language for all 4 years, number one. And number two, at some point in their high school career, they travel outside the country. Now, that could involve Mexico, it could involve Canada, or something a little bit farther afield.
Right. And speaking of that, we
Yes.
offer a lot of trips.
We
in the Hingham
do.
Public
We
Schools.
do.
And a lot of them are related to foreign language, not all, but a lot are. So talk about that and how that works.
Well, there are very active clubs for each language at the high school, and on alternate years, if we have a sufficient number of students, we will take trips to France, to Spain, to China, and also to Italy and Greece to look at the ancient civilizations. The middle school, there's a very well-supported program for a trip to Quebec every spring. And
In
that's
fact,
open to
that
8th grade
trip
students.
is on our school committee agenda for this coming Monday night
Good.
because it involves late night, overnight travel, and so
Right.
the school committee gets to find out about those. But that's been a long time.
Right. Yeah, it's very well supported. Lots of kids participate, 8th grade students, and it's a nice way really to culminate their language experience at the middle school. It's every May.
Right.
So.
And I think we're always looking for ways, particularly as we look at global studies programs, to find opportunities for students to be able to have similar experiences in terms of learning about culture and so on to what they would have if they could travel. We're
Yes.
fortunate in our town that lots of children can travel
Yeah,
in
that's exactly
financial
right.
means to do that.
Right.
But that's not true for everyone, and it's not true in a lot of places. So I think we're always on the lookout for ways that students can have similar experiences if they aren't able to
Yes.
afford.
And you know, we've sort of reconfigured the trips a little bit. It's gotten so expensive to travel so that rather than traveling around a country, that we might be based in Paris and take day trips out, or based in Madrid and take trips out, and we've shortened them by a couple of days. But it's such a wonderful opportunity for the kids to use their language firsthand, and also to see the culture they've been studying for a number of years firsthand.
Great.
It's
All
very
right.
eye-opening. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good background and
Yes.
context, and so we'll move to foreign language. And certainly our study of Spanish at the elementary level has been around for a number of years now, although we added kindergarten this year. But many years ago, back in the 70s, we had foreign language in the elementary school. Students could pick either Spanish or French, and that was when the 6th grade was at the elementary.
I
And
see.
then we lost that program for
Right.
a time. And so we were very excited when we got it back, but it was only grades 1 through 5 because we had only a part-day kindergarten and it couldn't fit into the schedule. So now Hingham has a full-day kindergarten, as most of our viewers know, and so Spanish is there, and it's
Yeah.
back for the first time.
That's terrific.
So, Jen, tell us, so you've been teaching the Spanish here for a while, and now you have kindergarten, and so what's different about adding the kindergarten program?
What's different is it's just it's new this year, and so we're having to work with a younger group of children. So that's a big change, and so what we're doing is we're spending a lot of time with the students, just like really we're introducing a lot more songs to them. We have a lot more up and down activities, so because we don't want them sitting still for very long on the rug, we're reading stories to them. So it just gives us a little more time to kind of enrich the program a little bit more with them, kind of slowing down, stretching out the 1st grade program a little bit, introducing concepts and spending more time with it. So it's been really a pleasure to teach the kindergartners. They're very excited. They're always saying hello to us, Sola, in the hallway, and just so excited about it. It's really wonderful to watch the little ones coming in. They're little sponges. They're just picking it up quickly.
Right,
So
and they are little sponges.
They are.
I've had the fortunate experience in recent years to travel to a lot of different countries to international schools. And often the international school is a bilingual school where 3-year-olds in a preschool program are chattering away in their native language on the playground, and then they come in and they're talking English in the classroom, and really is amazing to see what the youngest minds can do. So there's a lot of research, obviously, about the importance of starting foreign language early. So Chelsea, what are some of the things that that are enhanced about the study of language when you can start at an early level?
Yeah, studies have shown that the earlier your brain is able to learn a foreign language and absorb it, there are many benefits, such as enrichment and being able to do better in testing in across all subjects.
Things that you wouldn't think would be related.
Right.
Exactly, but also something I really enjoy is the cultural awareness. It really helps them at a younger age to be more excited about other cultures, more interested in them, more accepting of learning other culture, other languages. But also, I do think that if you start learning from a younger age, the brain is able to take that much more in. Like Jen said, they're sponges at such a young age that as they grow older, for example, when they learn to speak, they have less of an accent in that language because they're learning from such a young age. And I just think, I mean, like the testing and lots of research has shown the earlier the better. The earlier you can get it in there when their brains are ready and excited, the better they can do.
I hadn't thought of the cultural bit, but that's particularly important in a community like ours. It's a
Yes.
pretty homogeneous student body, and so the more we can expose kids to culture and language and the things that make us different, but the same, are important to include. So,
And the thing that's great is that they get excited to show that they know things about other cultures. So it's not, it's just this excitement that they have it's quite contagious.
they don't have as many inhibitions as kids have when we get into the middle grades, for example.
Exactly.
So great. Jen, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, the other thing I'd add is it really helps them understand their own language. So they go back then to their English class, and their English, their regular education teacher comes in during the day, and they're making then those connections back to their own language. They're like, oh, I learned this verb, and I learned this adjective, and the structure of the sentence, it might be a little bit different in Spanish, but I'm able to apply that structure back to my English language, and I'm hearing the word adjective again. I'm hearing the word verb. I'm hearing conjugation. I'm hearing cognates, and I'm making all these connections back to my first language, which helps them become more fluent, I believe, in English at the same time.
If I could just add
Sure.
one thing, Don, I think our whole program is based on the 5 tenets of the American Council of Teaching on Foreign Languages, which really sets the national standards, and they have what are called the 5 C's. So communicate first, which is our primary goal. Culture is second,
Really?
second C. The third is connection, and Jen, that's what made me think about this, is making connections to your own culture and to your own personal lives. The fourth is comparison, compare and contrast, and the last, of course, is community. And so, but as you just said, these sponges, so they're communicating, they're learning the culture, and they're making the connections and the comparisons.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
3 of the 5
Yeah,
right there.
yeah.
And speaking of those 5 C's, we also have kind of a theme of reading and writing and listening and speaking. So I would
Right.
think, particularly at the elementary school, secondary school, we're trying to do them all at
Right,
once.
we
but
are.
Is it true that at the elementary school, in the early years, you're going from the listening and speaking, moving more into the reading and writing? Is that a fair?
We don't focus too much on the reading and the writing, although we're starting to get into that a little bit more with the 4th and 5th graders. We're really focusing on those oral skills and those listening skills, and just developing them. We figure if they're listening, they're able to repeat. They're practicing these new sounds and these new words with their mouth. They're not necessarily used to
Right.
vocalizing in this way, and it's just really repetition helps them get better at it, and helps them improve their skills.
Exactly.
And obviously, for very young children, the idea of having to listen and focus is something that we want to work at from the very early stage.
So we try to
This is
make
the
it fun and
appropriate
exciting for
example.
them. So when they do learn and listen, they're learning and listening. They're just excited about it. So we make it a lot of games, a lot of songs.
Right.
So they learn to love it.
So this is the first year, of children having Spanish before grade 1. So does that mean that next year the grade 1 curriculum is going to change a lot or not?
That is something that is in the works. So it's sort of fluid right now that we set up an agenda for the year. What do we want to accomplish in kindergarten this year? And we had some materials that we were able to purchase. So we're like, okay, let's see how this goes. And it's new, so we weren't really sure. And so now over the summer and at the end of this year, I'm sure we're going to need to sit down and be like, okay, so where do we pick up from here? Do we go back, review certain areas, and then move on? So I think that we, by the end of 5th grade, will get through a little bit more of our curriculum. But the fact that we were able to take more time with the kindergarten class, we're not necessarily going through things at full speed ahead. So we won't be speeding up too much. In 1st grade.
But hopefully come out at the end with kids who are more confident and more proficient because of the length of. So there's this concept I've been hearing about in terms of foreign language instruction with very young children called TPR or TPRS. Well, you both chime in and talk about that. So why don't you start, Jen?
We started using some TPR in class, and so TPR, all it is it's a method of teaching, and it was invented by this man. His last name's Krashen. So what he did is he has one of the beginning things is to have the children get up and act out a verb. So what I've done with the children is they can't sit on the rug for 40 minutes. It's too much time for them. So we have them take sort of a break after we'll run through a few items in our routine, and they get up and we teach them verbs. So if I want to teach them the verb to walk, I'll say camina, and I've taught them that they have to walk in place, and we've taught them jump and turn around and all sorts of words, and so they're making connections with their brain through total physical response. And then what happens then, right now we're implementing in 3rd grade through 5th grade that we start storytelling. So the TPRS would be then the storytelling. We use the TPR, the total physical response words that we've practiced with them. And then we implement storytelling with them. And then we include these words, these TPR words, in our instruction. So every time we're saying a word like this in our story, such as walk, the children who are in their seats and participating in the class are walking in their seats, and they might need to cry or they might need to yell, and so they're of course practicing an indoor yell, but they're engaged in the class and engaged in this story, and it just works out really fabulous for the children. Everyone gets to participate. We have actors up front that are acting out the story. They have props. We're stopping and asking questions completely in Spanish. They're not allowed to speak in English. And I have them tally and keep track of, how much they're making, they're participating in the class. So they're grading themselves. So they love that. And then they're answering questions completely back in Spanish to the teacher. So it immerses them completely for at least 10 to 15 minutes in the language. And then by the time we finish the story, they're able to repeat back the story to me completely in Spanish, and we're writing it down on the smartboard. And then the next day we'll go back and we'll pair read with the story, and they'll answer some questions. And again, completely in Spanish during this whole period of time. And they're in 3rd grade doing this, so it's very impressive.
Is this the first year you've actually tried that, Chelsea? Or,
For
you wouldn't know
Yeah.
except by someone telling you. But
This is the first year I've done
You've
it
done it,
myself.
yeah.
But my absolute favorite part of it is that they're using all of their senses to do it. So they're listening, which is, it's important to get your ear attuned when you learn a foreign language. They're speaking, which is the hardest. Production is the hardest part of learning a foreign language. But they're getting used to how it feels and how it's fun. They're reading and writing. They're reading the words we're writing on the board to help them. So they're really fully just engaged. All their senses are doing it, and they love it.
and really focusing to anticipate when they can do that.
Exactly.
that activity that goes with it.
They love it, and they're so interested. And the best part is, it's for everyone. If they'll speak chorally. They'll answer as a whole class, but also they'll answer the 2 or 3 actors on the stage will answer. Right. So the best part is it's for everyone. If you don't want to come up, if you have stage fright, you can still participate just as much from your seat, and you're learning just as much as if you were an actor on the stage. So
and also importantly, this is language instruction is for everyone. So
Right.
it's in the regular class, we have children with special needs, children with 504 plans, and they are able to participate in their level as well. So we offer it to everybody, and everybody gets something out of it. In fact, at the elementary level, most of our children with special needs are included in the full-day program. Very few would be in a separate setting. So
I've
that's
also had
exciting too.
excuse me, the sixth grade teachers have said that the students who are coming into the middle school, having had the benefits of the TPR and the TPRS instructional strategies, are just that much further ahead in terms of their understanding and comprehension of, you know, with the physical response to it. It's just an automatic understanding of what these words mean, and so they're just that much better prepared.
Okay.
Which is great.
It's
So-
fun to watch them. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's fun to watch them with the with when we do the TPR, the movements. It's fun to have the students do them for the class. So once they get used to the verbs and the commands that you teach them, you can have them come up and they'll say
Like simple
salta, and the
Simon.
whole class will jump. And
Yes.
it's fun. It's so fun to watch them do it, and you
Right.
step aside and really see how much they've learned.
And we're talking about a lesson once in a 6-day cycle here. We're
Yeah.
not talking
Yes,
about
that's
every
right.
day, and
Right.
it's amazing to me what
It is,
they
yeah.
can pick up in just that short
That 40
exposure.
minute, right.
Yeah.
Great.
40-minute time frame.
So before we end this segment, I'd be interested in how all three of you really got interested in foreign language and studying foreign language. Did it start when you were like really young, or was it something you picked up later in college? Or
I think it was for me, it was a variety of things. I had a wonderful teacher here in Hingham in sixth grade, and she just, I don't know, I was very interested. It was always such a fun class and wonderful teachers.
and was Spanish the language you were following?
It was Spanish, yep, yeah, Spanish. I was at foster school, and then I went through Central Junior High School at the time, and I had wonderful teachers there. And it was one of the classes I always had a really good grade in Spanish class, and then getting to the high school, I again just loved it, and ended up traveling. I spent a year in Spain and traveling to Mexico, and decided I had taken enough credits, and I was like, maybe I should just major in that too. So, so I loved it.
But being the eclectic person you are, you know, studying special education and working on a
Yes, I just
license
started.
in that,
Actually, I had to
so.
step back from the Spanish, which I didn't know how that would be at first. But now I've taken on my practicum. I'm doing my practicum at Plymouth River in special education until the end of the year.
Yep.
Yes.
How about you, Chelsea? How
For
did
myself,
you get interested?
I started studying Spanish in 4th grade, and I just really enjoyed it so much. My teacher, she was bubbly and interesting and always taught us fun stuff. I remember the first word I ever learned in Spanish. But as I...
Which was?
It was pájaro, which means bird.
Oh.
It's a bird. And I thought it was fun to say. I have a lot of fun favorite words, but that was my first word, and it just stuck with me, and I loved it. So I ended up, studying it all through high school, doing the Spanish National Honor Society, and then I majored in it, and I got the opportunity to live. I studied abroad twice because I majored in 2 languages in college and undergrad. So I got to live in Spain and Italy. So I love meeting other people. I love speaking other languages. And
you went to school where?
I went, in Spain, I went to Oviedo, Spain.
No, in what college did you go to?
University of Massachusetts
Okay.
in Amherst.
And you, Jen?
Bridgewater.
Bridgewater? Great.
Yeah.
And Madame, how did you get interested?
Yeah, well,
We've never had this
No, we
discussion.
haven't. Started learning French when I was in about 3rd or 4th grade, and was fascinated by a different way to communicate. And it was easy for me. I loved it. I added Latin in 7th grade, so continued Latin all the way through high school, continued French all the way through high school. And then when I got to college, I picked up Spanish as well. And I spent my junior year at the University of Geneva in Switzerland because I was going to go to Paris, but I realized Geneva is French speaking, and I could also ski pretty easily. But that's how. And I continued with the French after I graduated by taking classes at the Alliance Française in New York and then in Boston. So I'm just fascinated by it. I love to travel, different cultures, meeting different people.
Great.
Same as.
All right, so we're near the end of the segment. I'd ask you one question, all of you, and that is there something that you would like for our audience to know? And our audience is broader than the parent group. While I'm sure there are a lot of parents who like to tune in. There are a lot of other citizens of our town that don't know a lot about what's going on in our schools, and we try to bring them information as well. So is there something that you think such an audience ought to know about foreign language that I haven't asked you to talk about? Chelsea, what do you think?
I think as we wrap up World Language Week this week, actually, I have to say that for me, it's so important to know that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, there is a world so much bigger, but in a good way. There's so much you can learn from other people, whether it's be another language, another culture. And I just think that to keep that in mind, we're just a small, tiny puzzle piece to such a big puzzle. You can really, the world is your oyster. You can learn so much. You can learn from so many other people, and you have a lot to give other people. So that's sort of the beauty of learning whatever language you want to learn, whatever culture.
And for me, I just think, especially with our students growing up in the world they're growing up in today, and even our adults, we're noticing the mixing of community and culture. And as that happens, I just feel like it's very important for especially our youngsters to be educated in another language, so they just have that mindset that, okay, the language, the culture, I understand some of this culture, this person's culture, I understand their language, I'm able to understand where they're coming from, their point of view. I might not agree with their point of view, but it opens me up that, okay, we have differences, we have things that we're similarities, and it will just help them get along in the world, because we're becoming smaller and smaller. We're getting closer and closer. And also with job opportunities, it will give them the opportunity to move, to be adaptable in we don't know what our world's going to be like in 25 years when all these boys and girls have jobs.
Right.
So they need to be marketable.
Great.
Yeah.
Gwen?
Yeah.
So,
I would say that the whole program is very active. It's student-centered and proficiency-based, and really the whole premise of everything we do is to provide them with the foreign language skills, and really, as you both have alluded to, the intercultural understandings to make them be able to be successful and function successfully in today's, globalized world.
right.
Yeah.
Right. All right, well, we're going to wrap up this segment, but before we do that, Chelsea, who's a first-year teacher in Hingham, has received a very important acknowledgement. The Plymouth County Education Association, which Hingham is a part, has a dinner, a banquet every year, and they honor people in lots of categories, retirees and that kind of category, but also they have a Rookie of the Year award, and we're so honored. I just found this out today that Chelsea is the Rookie of the Year for Plymouth County Education Association. Quite an honor. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a break and come back and talk a little bit more about the secondary program. Particularly, we're going to talk about Latin and the study of Chinese. So be right back. Welcome back, everyone. This is the second segment of episode 15 of the Superintendent Spotlight, and we're focusing today on the foreign language program. In the first segment, earlier today, we spoke with Sue Keys, who's the Director of Foreign Languages, K-12, and we're really proud to say K, of course, because it's the first year of kindergarten instruction. And we talked to two of the elementary specialists, and we are now going to talk about the secondary program, mainly the high school program, because we have two languages beyond the French and Spanish that we've had for years. And interestingly, our oldest language we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, that's Latin, and our newest language, which is Chinese. So I'm going to introduce my guest. To my immediate left is Erica Pollard, and Erica teaches our Chinese language program, the whole program. We'll talk about how much that is in a minute, but also has 1 or 2 classes each year in social studies. This year it's 1.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Only one.
And so then to my far left is Justin Minahan, who's been at the high school how long, Justin?
This is my 10th year.
10th year, and you came with a combined Latin-Spanish and still teach both Latin and
Right, I
Spanish.
teach one Spanish this
One
year.
Spanish, okay. And Ron Urbanati, who's newer at the high school, total Latin program. How long?
It's,
Ron?
8 years.
8 years here. Okay, Good. So let's go back to Erica. So you weren't the first teacher of Chinese that we had, but you came along, what, 3 or 4 years into the program, would you say?
Actually, the program started for only 1 year before I came.
Okay.
And this is my 10th year. Justin and I were
Okay.
hired in the same year.
In the same year.
This will be the 11th year total for the Chinese
Right,
program.
good, okay. And so what courses do we offer? I know it varies a little bit from year to year because of enrollment, but this year, what are we teaching in Chinese language?
So this year I have a Chinese 1 course, which is for absolute beginners. People start from the very beginning with Chinese 1. They have no background in the language. I have a section of Chinese 2. No Chinese 3 this year, again, because of enrollment. I have a section of Chinese 4, which is offered both as college prep and as honors. And then a section of AP where they're preparing for the AP Chinese Language and Culture exam.
So in a very short time, we've been able to offer a whole sequence culminating with the AP, so that's wonderful. And we teach Mandarin.
Yep.
That's this is only available in the high school. So it strikes me that high school youngsters electing Chinese are doing it as a second language, but maybe that's not right. So tell me a little bit about the students in high school.
Some students are choosing Chinese as a third language, so they're continuing to study the language that they studied in middle school, French or Spanish. And some are choosing Chinese because they want something different, and so they are only studying Chinese. It's their only foreign language course in high school. Generally, people are drawn to Chinese for a couple of reasons. One of them is that they're interested in some way in the culture, and another is that they want to try something that's really different. I have a lot of students who are really drawn to the fact that Chinese is really very significantly different from French or Spanish or Latin or English, and they really like to try something that's totally new and different.
And I can remember the first year that we offered Chinese, there was a tremendous amount of interest in a non-Romance language. And actually it started because of some pressure in the community to do something that was likely going to be either Chinese or Arabic, to offer that for kids. And but I can remember the first year that there was all this enthusiasm about joining, and then there was this perception that, oh my gosh, it's so hard. And it's hard to know whether that was just about it's different, and sometimes we all think new and different things are harder for some reason. But what would you say to that if a parent were to say to you, well, my child would really like this, but I understand it's a really hard course?
So there have been studies done about the difficulty of learning Chinese as a foreign language, and part of its difficulty lies in the fact that it is really different from English. But that doesn't mean that Chinese class is harder than Spanish class or French class or Latin class. And the reason for that is because the instruction has to be planned really carefully so that we're starting, all of us, from the very beginning, and the kids have to feel really supported every step of the way. So even though there are some aspects of Chinese language that are difficult, I try really hard to make it really accessible to everybody, again, by supporting all of the language and communication that they're trying to learn about. In addition, although there are some things about Chinese that are difficult, there are other things that a lot of students find are much easier than French or Spanish, particularly when it comes to grammar. Chinese verbs don't get conjugated, and there are no real tenses in Chinese, so Chinese grammar is actually a lot easier to master than Spanish or French. So students find that some things are harder and some things are easier, and on the whole, I think that it's actually about on par difficulty-wise with the other languages that are taught at the high school.
I used to feel that when parents would speak to me about it, that a lot of it was about the memorization. There seemed to be more memorizing, and in many subjects in our schools in 2016, we don't require memorizing, such as we might have years ago when students would memorize parts of speeches or poems or pieces of works of literature. So. And because they just don't do it anymore, they have to sort of develop that skill again.
Yeah, and I think that that's true. Maybe Justin and Ron can speak to this when we talk about Latin, but I think that it's true in a lot of language courses that at some level, obviously we're going to practice communication and we're going to practice functional language, but at some point you do have to remember words. And so there is an aspect of memorization. And in Chinese, that becomes particularly important because unlike in English, where you can look at an unfamiliar word and sound it out,
And figure it out because you've
Right,
taken
figure it out
Latin.
if you've taken Latin and you know the roots. In Chinese, there's no real connection between what the character looks like and what it sounds like. So you really do have to memorize the connection between the written character and the sound that it makes.
So we have language lab at the high school, obviously, as well as at the middle school, and I'm going to ask the same question of our Latin teachers. So how is the language lab use different for you with your Chinese classes as opposed to how it functions with French and Spanish?
Having access to computers when learning Chinese is a huge asset.
So as well as the language lab, I know you have Chromebooks that you use on a regular basis.
I have a set of Chromebooks in my classroom that were purchased through a really wonderful grant from the HPS over the last 2 years. And the reason that using computers to learn Chinese is so beneficial has to do with the Chinese language itself. So the Chinese language, as I mentioned, there's no real connection between what the character looks like and what it sounds like. So we use another system which is called pinyin, which uses Romanized letters to describe the pronunciation of a Chinese word.
Okay.
And when you type in Chinese, you type in that pinyin, what the word sounds like. And what pops up on your computer screen is a list of characters with that pronunciation, which seems like it would be kind of slow. But in reality, computers have a good understanding of syntax. So if you, for example, type a full sentence, based on context and the syntax of the sentence, it can figure out what you want to say. What the student then has to do is, instead of writing the character by hand and memorizing all the little pieces, they have to recognize what's on the screen as a character that's familiar to them. It's a much easier process. So typing is largely a process of recognizing, and it also solidifies the connection between the pronunciation of the word and the way that it looks on the screen. So that means that my students, because we have access to Chromebooks every day and because we have access to the language lab on a regular basis, they get to practice output really, really early on in the process, much earlier on than if they were going to learn solely to write by hand. We do learn to write characters by hand, but I feel like typing is a really good supplement to that process, and it helps students to communicate really early on. So they can communicate quickly and gives them a sense of success.
And so do you do the same thing in the lab that you do with the Chromebooks that you have in the classroom, or use that for different things?
In the language lab, we also have the benefit of recording technology. And part of what's really good about that is that we can use it to focus in a really specific way on pronunciation. My students, usually when we go to the language lab, will do a recording. And then over the course of the next week, I will listen to those recordings, and I can actually insert my voice right into their recording to correct pronunciation. So if I hear a mistake, I can correct it right there. And I find that them hearing my correction is more effective than reading on the paper that this word was wrong.
Okay.
So then the next week when we go back into the lab, they'll listen to their own recording with my feedback and be able to make note of, I have them generally do a self-reflection and assess their own pronunciation and the progress that they're making towards sounding a little bit more natural.
Okay. So in our other languages, there's often a club. You know, is there a club or something that the kids can participate beyond the class?
We have an active Chinese club, and over the last, well, again, this is my 10th year, so we have done in the past every other year a trip to China. We visited a whole lot of different Chinese cities in sort of a different itinerary every time. And that gives the kids an opportunity to try out their language skills in the real world context. So a lot of my students will go on these trips and they'll come back after having a communication with somebody and really feel like, wow, all that stuff we learned in the classroom really worked. That person really knew what I meant and what I wanted. And they have a really good feeling of success about that. It also is a really good way to help them understand culture, because the trip always includes a component where we visit either with a family or with a school, and kids get the opportunity to interact one-on-one.
And actually, we have had over the years, at least in 2 schools, relationships between elementary school in Hingham and a sister school in China. And in fact, I'm not sure you know this, but about 15 years ago now, I had a student from mainland China who lived with me for a year, went to Hingham High School, and you know, he was here for the entire year, went back there, and finished his high school career. He was only 15 when he came here, and it was a really interesting experience, the whole language piece. He had great understanding. His greatest trouble was in the writing of Chinese. So one would think I would have learned something during the year. I didn't. I did not, sadly. But
Well, I'm sure he was looking for opportunities to practice his English.
Yes, he was very
Yeah.
much, very much.
So, in addition to those trips, we have a whole lot of cultural activities that the Chinese Club is doing. We played mahjong last month, which the kids really
okay.
liked. We've been trying some different varieties of tea. They've liked exploring some Chinese food and Chinese tea, going to Chinatown to check out some of the restaurants. And again, those are more local opportunities where they can really use their language skills. We went on a scavenger hunt maybe a month or so ago to the Kinmen Marketplace in Quincy, and we asked them to find foods from as many different countries as they could find in this one supermarket. And the winning team, I think, found more than 50 different countries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really impressive.
Wow. My exchange student, every Sunday night, we went to a different Chinese restaurant on South Shore. But we went not because of the food, because he would say to me, "This is not real Chinese food." We went because the waiters were Chinese, and that was his opportunity to speak in his own language once a week, because he certainly didn't get that at my house, that experience. So, well, thanks, Erica. Let's move on to Latin, and of course, Latin has been a long time subject in the Hingham Public Schools. I remember taking Latin in the office in the building where my office actually is now, in the 9th grade. So, but I certainly see that language instruction is different today from what it was, and the focus is different. And so I'm interested in how you would describe the differences. You've both taught now 10 or so years.
Yeah.
So Justin, why don't we start with you, and then Ron, you can chime in.
Sure. I think the difference that I see is when I took Latin as a student, I would, we would memorize our charts and we would look at it almost like a puzzle. If it has this ending, then it means this, and this happens. And we still have that to a certain extent, but I think it's important today that we view Latin as a language instead of a puzzle. And I think that really helps students kind of get a grasp of it. I mean, the focus is on the reading, but you really need to view it as a language. You can't stop every sentence to try to figure things out. You need to take it in in as many different ways as you can. So the Latin classroom for us, I think, is, we speak it out loud, we read it, we write it, we listen to it. So there's a lot of different, they get the language from a lot of different senses that wouldn't have been done even 15, 20 years ago. I think the approach is now look at Latin almost as a modern language without the same goals exactly, but to look at it as a language, I think, is the big difference between what it is now and what it was, say, 15, 20 years ago.
And so kind of the theme that I talked with Sue about the listening, speaking, reading, writing component, Latin is included in that.
Absolutely.
That set of things. Ron, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, years ago the curriculum would focus on what they would call the grammar translation method in Latin,
Oh, I
and it was
remember
taught
that.
mostly as an abstract subject. Now, in contemporary Latin instruction, it's mostly based on the reading method. So a lot of practices of modern foreign language instruction have been brought in. So there's not so much focus on learning the actual, distinct rules of grammar and then using them to translate from Latin to English and English to Latin. But our goal is to read vast
Fluency,
quantities of
perhaps, more
Latin
fluency.
and absorb the syntax through the process of reading. So that's where the modern focus is. And the textbook series we use, which is the Cambridge Latin, is a reading-based method of Latin instruction. We do have, I grew up with the abstract grammar translation method, and I do find some of those old school methods very effective. So I do at times bring those into the classroom.
Sure.
A lot of, like we were talking about earlier about difficulty in memorizing, and so we do a lot of, I do anyway, a lot of old-fashioned memorization techniques of chanting out forms to get them to use it, try to promote flashcards. So, you know, I'll use whatever method works.
Okay. So what courses do you each teach in the Latin sequence? What about you, Justin?
This year I'm teaching Latin 1, 2, 3, and 4, so I'm teaching all levels.
Okay. And Ron, you're
I'm doing section of Latin 1, 2 sections of Latin 2, a section of Latin 3, and then the AP Latin.
in AP. Okay. So we have the full, compressed into 4 years.
Yeah, we have the full sequence, yeah.
And certainly I remember as I was a department director for many years and went to the program of studies night, and I listened to parents coming to our different stations. I was in math, and often foreign language would be next to me, and the questions would always be about, well, I want my child to study Latin because, and the becauses tended to be, this was going back a lot of years, either so I will be better at English, or so I can figure out those words on the SAT. Of course, I just read today the new SAT has just come out, and they've replaced all of those words by things that are more traditional things. But those were the two things then that people said they wanted for their children. So, so is same kinds of reasons today for kids to pick up Latin?
I think there's a lot of those reasons are still there. I think a big thing that we get, students signing up for Latin are really interested in the culture. And I think Latin offers them really an opportunity to communicate with the past. You're reading authors' firsthand accounts of different events from Roman history and Greek history. So I think the communication with the past and the history and the culture is something that the students really are interested in.
And I can remember we had a Latin teacher who was predecessor of both of you, who used to get dressed up and portray different characters, and often went to the elementary school, which was great to bring that there. So I'm sure we have different things now, but what are some of the things for youngsters who really take to Latin and want to have some experiences beyond the course and the classroom?
Sure. Well, I don't know. Well, we have a Latin club, and every other year, as Erica said, we'll do a trip to Italy or Greece, numbers dependent, but we'll go there, we'll explore, we'll see the different monuments, and we'll travel throughout really the Roman Empire. In addition to that, we'll do holiday parties, Saturnalia parties, Lupercalia parties. We have a chariot race that has gone on for the last 10 years. So we have lots of opportunity outside of the classroom. We've done coin projects where students have...
You have the contests that you offer.
Absolutely.
The pumpkins.
Yeah, then
Pumpkin
the
contest.
monsters from the classical world pumpkin carving contest. So we do that around Halloween, where the students have to carve a pumpkin of a monster from the classical world, and we have a contest based around that. So yeah, we do try to do many different things to stimulate interest. Try to make it fun and entertaining.
Sounds like it is.
Yeah.
Let me ask you all a question that and that would be, what is it that you would like people who are watching, and they're mostly, I think, people in the community rather than, you might think simply parents watch this. Actually, it tends to be more people in the community that perhaps haven't been in a school for many years, and we like sharing with them what we do in our schools. So. So thinking about that, what didn't I ask you that you want people to know about Chinese in high school, taking Latin in high school? So
I think that the bigger reason behind any foreign language is that we want our students to be able to communicate as part of the larger world, to be competent in a global context. And
of course, global studies is a big concept in our
right,
in our
and
high school.
It's something that has become, I think, a real focus of what we're doing at the high school. And learning a foreign language is such an important part of that. Whichever language you choose, it really enables you to, even if you feel like when I travel, people speak English, they'll talk to me in my language. when you talk to somebody in their own language, you can connect with them on a level that you just can't quite get at if you're making them translate. So I just think that I can't underemphasize how important it is to have access to a foreign language and a foreign culture. And in terms of studying Chinese, it's not as hard as people think it is.
Okay, good point. Justin, what would you say that you want people to know that I didn't ask you about?
I would say definitely I would echo a lot of what you said. I know Latin is not a modern spoken language, but I think the ability to communicate with the past is an important one.
You know, I always love in my history classes having students who are taking Latin.
Great. Ron?
Well, one thing I think is important, I mean, you know, I do enjoy the language and the grammar and the vocabulary, but for me, I got into the study of Latin because I studied ancient history, and I wanted to have the ability to be able to read the primary sources in the original language. So I think the knowledge of the history, which is the basis of, you know, the Western culture and all of our institutions, you know, from the republic of our government, which is based on the institutions of ancient Rome, to the architecture of Washington, D.C., which is modeled on Roman architecture, to the, you know, the use of our language, which is derived something like 70% of the English vocabulary has been borrowed directly from Latin, and the you know, the current influences that are exerted to this very day. And the fact that classics is the original multidisciplinary study, right? And the Roman Empire was a multicultural empire covering the Middle East, Southern Europe, all the way to the Nordic North. So there were many different cultures embraced in the Roman Empire.
Great. Well, it appears Latin's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's been with us.
One thing my students always insist that I say when talking about Latin is that it's, many people call it a dead language, that Latin is a dead language. But I like to think of it as an undead language. So they always insist I mention that when I can.
Okay, all right. Anything else any of you want to add? Well, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You've taught me some things that I didn't know, and that's always a good thing. So I would like to thank our audience for tuning in and listening, and tell you that we have some upcoming episodes of Superintendent Spotlight, and they include one program that's going to be devoted to the coalition that we have in Hingham, the community coalition that is drug prevention, drug abuse prevention coalition, and all the interesting things that are going on with respect to activities in the coalition, including some activities who are the high school students, particularly students in our SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions, our SAD group. So that's coming up as well. We're going to have an episode focusing on security, physical security in the district, and some of the things that we're doing there, and involving the high school resource, the school-wide resource teachers. We have one at the high school, one at the middle school, and one shared among the elementary. That's another one. And we're going to have an episode coming up on the athletic program, and because a very exciting time at high schools right now in terms of athletics, the end of the winter season and all the tournament play, and our kids are all doing very well. So thank you again for listening, and see you next time on Superintendent Spotlight.